I'm so excited today to introduce our featured guest panel. So we have Christen Penny, Mark Uttley, and Manuela Escala. And I think the question on everyone's mind 2 years ago was, are we going to use AI tools? And now, today, the question is, how should we use AI tools to do our work more efficiently and have a bigger impact? So if you are curious about that question, you are in the right place. I'm really excited. I'm going to go through and have these folks introduce themselves. They all work across different teams, UX research teams at Autodesk. And we will start with Mark. Could you tell us a little bit about your role and your connection to AI tools?
Yeah, so I head up user research for AEC division of Autodesk, which is the architecture, engineering, and construction division. I've been in this role for about sort of a year and 3/4, and I've been leveraging AI in research since before my time at Autodesk, and very early on saw the power that it can have for driving user research forward as a discipline. So both agency side where I was before, and now client side, I've seen it really unleash a lot of potential. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to share some of your knowledge with us. Manuela, will you introduce yourself, your role, and your relationship to AI?
Sure, yeah. I am Manuela Escala, and hi everybody. Thanks for having me, and I'm very happy to be in this event. So I am a research operations principal program manager for the experience design team, digital experience design team in Autodesk. And my role is to make sure that our researchers and service designers have frictionless access to the tools and processes and information that they need to do their job better. And we started our journey with AI 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, when I joined the team, and my director at the time, Christen, that is here too, had the vision to give us the space and time to start experimenting, which I think it's very important. So yeah, since then we have been in that goal of bringing AI closer to our researchers in this long and short 2 years.
Oh, I feel that. I bet lots of folks are with you on that. Okay, well, thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you. Christen, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Christen Penny. I'm a senior manager in research operations. Sometimes I like to say, so I'm on the same team as Mark. So Mark very much is, I think, our visionary. He sets the vision, and then research operations, we are trying to make that vision come to life. We do a lot of that through onboarding of new tools, managing those tools, and we think a lot about the enablement and the rollout of tools to help make researchers' jobs as efficient, seamless, and interesting as possible.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing so we can all sort of see each other. And going to kick us off with some questions. Now, folks, as we're going through, I imagine this is going to spark a lot of discussion, a lot of thoughtful questions, and I invite all of that in the chat. So drop your questions, your follow-up questions. We have time at the kind of reserved for the end once we get through the bulk of some of these questions to address anything that's on your mind. So please engage with us, put those questions in the chat, and kind of be raising your hand for our giveaway as well as you're sharing some of your comments and your questions. Okay, so I think just to kick us off, I want to know what excites each of you the most about the future of AI in UX research. Where do you see the biggest potential for impact in our work? And Mark, maybe we'll start with you. What excites you the most?
Well, what excites me is that AI can take the busy work out of research and enable our researchers to focus on the most impactful work possible. So I'm not a doomer when it comes to AI. I'm really excited about its ability to unlock the true potential of research. I'm also a believer that AI will fundamentally change the nature of user research, and it unlocks the ability to look at things like user feedback for products at scale, and for user researchers to evolve into domains that are normally the area of data scientists. And so I do think that it places an existential challenge to our discipline, and one that we really need to think about digging into and learning. And we've been experimenting with it a lot to see what it can do for us as a team, and learning a lot.
Great. I'm sure we'll dig into some of those specific examples in a minute. Christen, maybe we'll go with you. What excites you the most about the future of AI in UX research?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is in that what I don't know bucket. So I think that there is so much possibility that maybe we don't even know what it is yet is super exciting. And very tactically it's a very research operations type answer, I think, but the power that we can get out of, like, for a repository is what I'm thinking of, right? We have very difficult niche audiences to recruit sometimes for participation. Sometimes our studies are really difficult or challenging to resource. So how can we make sense of all this existing data we have, where maybe someone can just ask a question and use generative AI to access all the corpus, all the data, all the presentations and reports that we already have to make meaning out of existing knowledge. That would be so powerful, but it would also, from a very tactical recruiting standpoint, would help us be able to maximize the people that we can contact for the most strategic, most important research, so that it's not replacing the research, but it's helping us be able to really focus on maximizing our resources and our research participant pool.
Oh, yes, maximizing each participant's time. I love that. Manuela, what excites you the most?
Yeah, basically complementing what Mark and Christen are saying. For me, and with the experience of these years, is like, I think that it truly unlocks human potential. I think it clears, personally, I experienced that it clears, it's like having a partner that clears the noise and lets me start operating at a high level that I don't think that otherwise I would reach by my own. So by default, I am already there. And I think from the ops point of view, and the tactical operative point of view, I think it also is going to help breaking a lot of barriers, language, compliance complexities, data governance challenges that are things that are not very appealing or easy to manage for researchers. But so that all that, I think, is going to be much easier, faster, and help us to grow and focus on what the humans can really bring something to the table and be more inclusive and sustainable.
Amen. Love that. Great. So we've talked a little bit about what's exciting, what's coming, kind of got a little bit of a sense of your philosophies on AI too. I would love to dive in and really talk about the implementation of AI tools in your practices. And I'm going to kick this off with Christen, because in our previous conversation, you mentioned you've been onboarding 6, 7 tools over the past year, AI infused superpowered tools into your domain. So what has that process really looked like for you?
Well, of course, it's challenging at times. So there's the whole legal and compliance aspect of it, especially, I don't know if it's different at different size companies, but we're a relatively large enterprise company. We we have a whole team that thinks about data and compliance quite a bit. And AI, I think, is cracking open the kinds of things our legal teams need to look at. But from the rolling it out perspective, I think in some ways, I think our team is reverse engineering some processes. So we onboarded quite a few tools relatively quickly. So that was in about a year. So that's a lot of tools in 1 year. And in my perspective, I think we have a little bit of tool fatigue amongst the researchers. And also some of that is research operations has been kind of learning about the tools at the same time as our researchers. So we haven't been able to get ahead of it and really think about enablement, how we're rolling these out, the programs that are going to support it, setting really good goals so that we know if it's been successful or not. So we're doing all of those things this year. So that's why I say I feel like we're reverse engineering it a little bit. So coming up with better rubrics, we're getting ready, like things are going to start coming up for renewal. So how can we learn which one of these are bringing the most value to our researchers? Which are the ones that maybe our researchers could bring so much value, but they just aren't really aware of that yet. So we're working with the vendors on enablement plans and also just education to see if that's where the gap may lie, or maybe we onboarded too many tools and we don't need some of them. So all of those things are kind of up for discussion right now. And yeah, thinking also a lot about the adoption barriers in education. And Mark, you might touch on the playbook a little bit later. I'm not sure, but that's something that we're also building, where is a playbook of trying not to recreate education on research methods. There's so much great information. Like, we don't need to tell people what a usability study is. There's so much amazing content out there already. So many free trainings out there already. We might be able to curate that, but our playbook is really focusing on how can we enable our researchers to work best in this relatively new world of using AI and AI tools. So the playbook, in each of the methods that we cover, the playbook highlights how you can use AI to further this, and which tools that are in kind of our corpus or our purview already can be used to further that work as well.
Great. It sounds like you really had a bias toward action, and that sounds really exciting. I have to know more about this playbook. So Mark, would you weigh in on that?
Sure, yeah. So we have been really documenting our process, and we aim to be a highly impactful team that drives from discovery all the way through to delivery and impact and optimization. So we've been documenting all the different methods that we use within that, and then we've started to document how AI can revolutionize and change those workflows. And we have developed a methodology for mapping out kind of workflows as they stand today, and then thinking about how AI can change them for the future. And then we're going to be running a whole series of workshops to document AI-powered workflows through the year. We hope to get through about 5 to 10 of them, and then go through the process of sharing that back to our teams. We're actually looking to potentially do that at the Autodesk level and not just within my team. And it's going to be an exciting journey of connecting with other researchers across the organization and really thinking about how we re-engineer the way we do what we do. And it's funny because we did a survey, much to your point of the beginning of this talk, on what did people think about AI, and it wasn't so much that they didn't think we should use it. It was more like they knew we should use it. They just needed to know how to use it. So that's what we're trying to achieve with this playbook work.
And it sounds like you're doing these workshops, and that's with your team members, but also other researchers, or does that extend to more stakeholders across Autodesk?
Yeah, so it actually started out of the UX team. So it's inclusive of content strategy, it's inclusive of UX, it's a kind of broader AI playbook that's getting built out. But we are probably one of the earliest adopters along with the content team. Our discipline is getting disintermediated quicker and faster. So we have to act faster. So we as a research kind of core group across Autodesk are really thinking about how we accelerate the adoption of AI across the board. And I think documenting workflows into our playbook will be a key component of that.
Great. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this playbook and the process of bias to action, quickly pulling in all of these tools and figuring it out along the way. Manuela, you're on a slightly different team, so what has your experience been supporting your team during
A
this?
little bit everything. We have been, I think we have focused, we took a little bit and slightly different, also focusing on something operational and playbook. But for us, we are trying to get very clear on what is the purpose, what is the what, and what is the why, the why we want to do this, because it's really messy out there right now. There are models keep evolving and appearing, new tools are appearing in AI, existing tools also are enabling AI functionalities, legal and ethical considerations keep shifting and improving as it should, but all that is not, with all that tools, it's not easy to understand what is right, and we think that this leads to confusion leads to resistance from researchers, and that at the end is low adoption and a waste of time and effort. So what we thought is like, okay, let's start being very clear. And also my team probably are tired of me making comparisons, but the most beautiful and expensive high heel shoes are not going to do anything if what you want to do is walk on the beach. So what we are we are starting small in order to scale, and we are trying to identify what is what you want to do, clarifying what is the problem that we are trying to solve, what is the data that you need, and understanding if this data needs to evolve with the process or not, or is like a one time, and then identifying what is the right tool for that specific thing. Once we have that, I think, and is validated by the researchers who are the ones who have to do the work, then ops can focus on setting up the structure, the repositories, the repeatable templates, and everything around it. But what we are now is focus on what is the best tool, what is what we're trying to do. Do we need AI, which normally is yes, and what is the best tool out there, because it's confusing.
Okay, so I'm seeing this common thread of Manuela's saying purpose-driven, outcome-driven. What problem are you trying to solve with the AI tool? Mark and Christen are speaking to, here's the workflow today, here's the workflow of the future, and facilitating some workshops to create this playbook, this guide to get to future state. So it sounds like, and no one's surprised on this call, you all are very outcome-driven individuals. But that's a great tip that I don't think I've heard a lot of, is thinking about what these tools, where are these tools going to get you, and then working toward that goal. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so we've talked about that whole process of pulling in these tools and what you're doing to get team members using these things. A couple things that have popped up in the chat that I'll open it up to all of our panelists to kind of weigh in on. So just an open question of, what was your previous experience with non-generative AI tools, many machine learning based tools we've all probably been using for years? And how would you contrast that experience with the generative AI, the large language model based AI tools that have emerged in the past couple of years? Anyone have a good answer to that, Mark?
Talk to that. Yeah. So in my previous agency, we were building machine learning driven dashboards that were synthesizing at scale user feedback to drive user research programs forward in terms of identifying user problems and pain points that needed to get solved. And those would fuel programs of research we would then deliver for our clients to improve different areas of their experience. The process of building a machine learning driven dashboard is actually quite laborious and manual, and requires really quite sophisticated data science capabilities, and it's not easy, I would say, and is not necessarily as powerful and effective as AI. So from an AI point of view, when you do the same thing, it is able to analyze in a much more precise way user feedback and get to user trends in that user feedback quicker. And a lot of the platforms that are out there are now kind of low code or no code, enabling you to do it. You know, even if you're a layperson, you're not a data scientist, what have you, but the quality of output is much better with AI than it is with machine learning. In fact, at Autodesk, there was a machine learning sort of dashboard like that that was just so expensive that it actually got turned off because the maintenance costs were so high. But we're now implementing a next generation AI system to go through all of our feedback at scale. And it's we've done 2 proofs of concepts, and the power of the output is demonstrably better. The ease of maintenance is much better, and we don't need to hire a data scientist to orchestrate it on our behalf. So yeah, it's just it's creating the ability to do this much more easily than before.
It sounds like a little bit of a paradigm shift. Whatever your perceptions of machine learning and sort of AI tools in the past may not be your experience with some of these generative model-based AI tools today.
Yeah, I would add that there are certain tools that still use machine learning and they're getting antiquated quickly. Like Qualtrics has struggled, I think, to update itself with like the true power of AI, just as an example. So tools that don't really embrace it properly will get antiquated quickly.
Yeah. You don't have to master AI to start like really benefiting from it. I think that the way that you can communicate directly, it doesn't. I think it continue igniting the curiosity that it comes along from researchers. And when you have these technological barriers like before, like with machine learning, that gets shut down. And I think that generative way to communicate is that it's just part of our way to know and learn. So I think that makes much powerful for everybody to access.
That's great. Kind of along these same lines, getting a question in the chat around there are so many of these AI tools coming into the market right now, and how do you navigate those waters? Was there a process either team sort of went through to evaluate these? Was this just word of mouth, or whatever sales team got in first? Like how did that work out for you?
I'd actually played around with a lot of tools in a prior capacity, so was bringing quite a lot of that experience to the table. I think there's a difference between like the smaller tools that are cheaper and easier just to try out, and then the big platform sort of products that are you need to do a proper RFP for. You need to really drill in and make sure you're making the right decision. But I would encourage anyone at any level in research, in agency or client side, to try at least the lower level tools that are relatively cheap and inexpensive to get started with.
I'll say, as the ops person who supports Mark, that one thing that I've worked on in the last probably 6 months is trying to slow down with trying some tools. Like Mark brought so much amazing knowledge and experience with tools that we were able to just jump in and start playing with them. But I'm sure a lot of people are in similar situations. Like I get bombarded with sales information, people sending me information about new tools, and I'm ready to slow down a little bit and let's really maximize the value out of the tools that we already have and find, like much to the question that's in this chat, like find ways of better assessing this and thinking about how we can share the load of assessing what we already have before we start adding new ones. Not to say we won't add new ones, right? If we hear of a really great one that is filling some gap, then we would definitely try it. But I think a lot of the tools are also starting to try to be everything in this one-stop shop. So I'm really trying to focus on what's special about each of these tools instead of trying to find one tool that's going to solve everything. I don't believe that one tool can solve everything. So I'm usually skeptic when they try to come in with that type of language also.
Again, not surprised of that given your backgrounds. Manuela, is there anything you would add to that sort of assessing or choosing which tools to pull in and experiment with?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit what we mentioned. I think it's very important to understand what you are trying to do and choose the right tool for that. And don't get lazy and just trust that one tool fits all, because it's not. And I think it's not easy. You have to continue seeing the full picture and trying to understand how these tools are going to connect. Because if not, it's very easy to say, well, that one can do that. And maybe that one, it doesn't have the best model for that. Maybe that one doesn't have the right prompting or the right use case that for your organization. So it's that keep experimenting, having the what and the why and the full picture very clear for everybody. And yeah.
I think part of the muscle that you have to learn is that process of experimentation. You have to try AI to figure out what it's good at and what it's bad at. There was a book called Co-Intelligence written by someone called Ethan Mollick, who, he had a concept in it called navigating the jagged frontier of AI. And you just don't know what it's going to be good at and what it's going to be bad at until you really try it. And I think that's the sort of stage that we're at. And I do think there will be a tool shakeout, and some will stay the course and others won't. And I think we're probably getting towards that point now, as the market is maturing.
And I think also it's interesting because I see in the chat some people talking about hallucination. Yeah, there are some things that you cannot control. We're using these models that are like a kind of black box for us. But I think that, and this is why it's so important to understand what your use case and what is the tool that you are using, because the prompting that you are putting there, it's very important. If you are not putting the right prompting, the right context, explaining what you are trying to do, it could hallucinate exactly the same model. It could hallucinate, and what is the data and what is the governance and the criteria that you are putting in your prompting. That same model can hallucinate, and just modifying the prompting and making very specific what you are looking for and very, very specific of how the data should be used. So yeah, you cannot avoid a hallucination, but I think the closest you are with the use case and the closer you are with a good prompting and to understanding what you are expecting, even though the AI is going to do the work for you, it can help with hallucination.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Christen?
I think this might have been connected to an earlier point, but something that really occurred to me, even when we were preparing for this panel, is to really we have a decentralized research organization at Autodesk. So Manuela and I, we might have similar roles, but we are in different teams. We don't have to use the same teams. We're not vetting them at the same time. But even just preparing for this conversation reminded me to really look out to the other people in your company. You might have a whole treasure trove of information and knowledge out there already. Like I know, Manuela, I've identified so many opportunities where we could partner on some of these things. And also the onboarding process of these new tools, since it can be so strenuous and take so much time, to really maximize. Like we want to start using a tool that Manuela's team onboarded, so we get to benefit from all that work that Manuela already did to be able to move forward a little more efficiently.
Yeah, that's great context here. So we've talked about this kind of in aggregate, but I'd love to hear if there is an example of a project that you've successfully completed with AI tools, and especially were there operational challenges? How much trust did you place in the AI tool? What did that all look like, boots on the ground?
I can talk to one that we've been running. So it is our goal to make all of our user feedback available via an AI synthesis tool to enable all of our product managers to see the trends in user feedback and then auto-generate product strategy documentation using AI generated from user feedback. and then to be able to track the effects that product improvements are having in user sentiment, and then at some point inform some of the storytelling we do back to our users to show that their voice matters and that we act on it. So we have this kind of lofty goal, and to kind of figure out whether it would actually work in practice, we chose one of our products. We put 5 key sources of user feedback into an AI tool, and we tried 2 different tools out on top of that feedback to see which of them would synthesize it most effectively. And we did a big sort of RFP in the market, and we've got, I think, the right supplier for the future. And having done a small scale pilot, we're really able to say with confidence that we think this is going to work in practice. And it wasn't just like our researchers using it, it was product teams and designers using it. We have something like 80 sort of trialists leveraging it and getting value out of it. And we're hearing things like it just totally accelerates the product planning process, whereas before a lot of our product managers would be manually copying and pasting data and trying to make sense of it, which is a pretty laborious process. They're now able to instantly see trends and chat with the data and get kind of quick answers. So I would say piloting is absolutely essential, and doing it with a real world product or case study within your organization, and trying to get it to as many like trialists as possible to get real feedback early.
Yeah, other thoughts, Manuela?
I can share another one of the first agents that we built, and was based on one of the first needs identified by one of our researchers, Judy. It was how to better use all the knowledge that the team is generating. We do all these studies, we have these repositories and libraries, but it's like so much information there. So how to surface all these hidden, maybe forgotten, maybe not even relevant information at the time that the study was developed. So we created our first AI agent, Escala, we call it. And she's able to go through our repository. And the good thing is that we were able to configure her ability to find information following our standards and our criteria. So, and our stakeholders and how we want to generate the output. So our researchers are trustable. So we generate an output giving the references, explaining why this information was selected through these projects. So, yeah, that agent doesn't replace the work that the researchers do, but it really helps accelerates pattern recognition and reuse the insights that we already had, and keeping the company memory more effectively between the researchers, so they can, again, they can start at a level faster, at a higher level that they could have done without this. And the good thing is also is like, we created the configuration, we created the patterns, we created what is important for the agent, as our agent in our team. So it's based on the model. The model does the work, but it doesn't depend on the model. If a model works better or gives better results than another, we can bring that to a different model. So that in that way, again, we keep having a little bit the control of what is happening.
Sounds like that's helping to combat something that was brought up in the chat, which is when unskilled or naive users come in and start using AI tools, how do you protect against that? Sounds like you've created some nice kind of guardrails around the output for this model, for this agent. So your stakeholders are getting the information in the way that you think is best.
Okay.
Great. Another theme I'm seeing in the chat is, how has research, either methodologies or maybe even like the stages of the process you're coming into, how has research changed as a result of some of these tools? Any thoughts on that?
I think it shortens the discovery phase radically, and it also creates a much more data-driven approach to user research. So I'm a fundamental believer in measuring baseline user sentiment at scale using AI, synthesizing the key trends in user feedback around your product, and then driving programs of agile, quick, fast sprints of research to solve the problems that you see in AI-powered user feedback. And when research becomes that sort of discipline, it becomes a much more data-driven and impactful discipline because you can then see actually the impact that you have on the user sentiment that you set out to solve for in the first place. And we begin to show the value of user research much more than before. You can also size up the problem for the first time, which is rather than relying on qualitative research to say this is a really big issue for our users, we can say like X number of users are saying this is their biggest problem or what have you. And when you start combining sort of MAU behavioral data with sentiment, you can start seeing very highly used areas of your product that have very low feedback. And you start being able to size up where you can have the biggest impact as a discipline. So I think it just challenges us to be more impact oriented and data driven how we do what we do. But the big bonus is it gives us all this rich information to kickstart our process, and it gives us this ability to measure the impact we have, which I think as a discipline, user research has struggled with, over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Other thoughts on that topic?
The big gain immediately is efficiency. Faster planning, faster analysis, faster time to insights, for sure. I think also it started to, like Mark said, like broader participation, more research. You can have now AI moderated interviews that you can do thousands of interviews at the same time without any language barriers, so you can touch more areas easily. What I hope, and I think we are still not there, is that researchers, with all that, they don't have to spend so much time doing summaries or analyzing, and they can really start like interpreting and like really influencing, and not just like and working most on that storytelling and not just like doing analysis.
Kind of to that point, would you say there's a piece, either a set of tasks or a stage in the research journey, if you will, that AI is particularly well suited for? Is it recruiting? Is it analysis of qualitative? Like, what is that highest value stage or skill set today, do you think?
I think analysis, categorizing and summarizing and extracting quotes, you have to be careful how relevant, because it's not always going to interpret it that this is the most important that a human will do. But I think you still have to supervise that. But it's like analyzing, summarizing, extracting, and categorizing. That it's already very good, and there are a lot of tools in different use cases and in different environments that can do that pretty well.
I'm interested in the scalable interviewing that Manuela was talking about, the idea that you can interview like way more users in way more languages than ever before. And I think it's interesting because like if you work back from qualitative interviews, obviously it's not going to be as good, but if you work up from the current state of surveys and you think of these as AI moderated interviews instead of surveys, it's a whole different paradigm shift. And, we do try to collect a lot of product feedback that's contextual within our products, and you get a lot of like 1 or 2 sentence answers, which is quite high level and isn't as rich and insightful as it could be. So I definitely think AI has potential in that area, not as a replacement probably for qualitative research, which will always be better done by real people, but as a potential to make surveys better than they ever were,
Yeah, that's not something I've heard, but I really love that point. Anchoring those AI moderated sessions to a survey, kind of leveling up your survey rather than comparing it to the gold standard of an in-depth qualitative interview run by a human. Great. Any big gaps What can AI not do well? What do you not trust it with? This is coming up in the chat a few times.
It's lousy with anything visual right now. Terrible at trying to, I guess OCR, it can recognize certain aspects of an interface, but it would never replace a live like usability interview in any meaningful way at the moment. Although agentic AI might at some point, but it doesn't have any of that capability right now.
Yeah,
I think we are still better than AI making questions. AI is very good answering, but I think we are still better at making the questions and finding where you have to dig in each case and in different circumstances and environments.
Tying back to that earlier question about the phases, like I'm intrigued as to how it could help with recruiting. So it's not something I've really thought about very much. Manuela, if it's not, I think like if it's not great at writing great questions, I think recruiting is very much about having the right questions that you're trying to answer as well. So so not necessarily a straightforward answer there, other than I think that that's a really interesting area to dig into. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Another item that maybe, I'm not sure that this is how the question in the chat was really intended, but I'm curious from an employee experience perspective, how is the adoption of some of these tools affecting your researchers? How is it affecting sort of job quality and engagement? Have you seen any effects on the team from this?
I would say the team is always time pressured. There's always more research than you could possibly do. And there's ever increasing demands from stakeholders to do what you're doing faster and to a higher level all the time, you know. So I think that it gives researchers a bit of breathing space. They can find their way through the data quicker. They can get to insights faster. And I'm really interested in trying to get my researchers out of like analysis mode into activation mode and driving sort of ideation, concepting, prototyping off the back of research. And I think we become more impactful when we do that work as a discipline. Has it made a meaningful like impact on staff satisfaction? Yeah, I don't know. You know, we did a survey, as I mentioned, and I think the main barrier to get over is frequency of usage. And once it's being used frequently for, you know, then I think we can measure the, you know, the sentiment of our researchers. But yeah, I think given how pressured they are for time, I would be surprised if it didn't make their jobs better, you know.
I think we have our early adopters. Like there's a couple of researchers where I know that whenever there's a new tool, they're going to be eager to test it out and be really excited about it. But my motto has pretty much been that, well, I think if we don't move with the trend, we're going to be left behind. Like I've been in jobs and industries before where, like for instance, I used to be a QA analyst. It became more about scripting. I didn't keep my skills sharp with scripting, and then I was kind of no longer skilled for the job because the job changed and I didn't grow with it. And I think all these AI tools are starting to be very similar for research. Like I don't want to fight it. I encourage my team not to fight it. We lean into it as much as possible. Always, like, I'm a skeptic. I always want to be skeptical a little bit. I think we should be thinking critically about them, making sure we're doing them ethically and they're helping us in the right ways. But yeah, I think we need to move with them as much as feels right to us, or else I fear that, like in my case, I'm like, I think I'll be skilled out of a job if I don't stay current with some of these things.
Yeah, I think you need to accept I think a lot of us in my team, I think I see it. There is confusion, but I think you need to accept that confusion. I think you need to accept that confusion and keep experimenting And slowly, these new concepts, because there's a lot of new concepts and it's not easy. And slowly, if you accept that confusion, keep experimenting and learning, concepts will start sinking in your brain. And then is when it's like, oh, wait a moment, now I get it. But that needs work and time and accept it and not resist like Christen, because it is there and it's not going to go anywhere.
What's your take, Mark? Any other thoughts on or advice you'd give researchers who are maybe hesitant to integrate AI or want to stay up to date on these things?
I mean, to Kristen's point, it will change our discipline. It is changing our discipline, and I look at I'm part of our design leadership, so I look at all of the different disciplines, and I just think research and content strategy are the two that are going to get it, revolutionized fastest by AI. It does a lot of what we have traditionally done faster and better than we can do it as humans. So we have to accept that, and then we have to evolve what we do and how we do what we do. With all the caveats around hallucination and making sure that it's producing reliable outputs. And there are a lot of things that you can put in place to make sure it's got the reliability you need it to have. But, it behooves all of us to properly explore it and see what it can do for us.
I love the attitude you all have when it comes to AI. That's something I want to absorb from this conversation personally. It's hard not to be excited when you all talk about the potential of these tools, but I also I'm really appreciating your realistic and skeptical mindset on some of the nuances here.
Quite interesting for us, because we serve a whole audience of architects and engineers and construction professionals, and it's changing their work too. And they want it to be embedded into, because they have some of the most laborious and manual work imaginable. Designing buildings, can be a very time-consuming process, and there's just so many ways that we can make their world better through AI. If we're not doing it for ourselves, we're not drinking our own Kool-Aid and as an organization. So, that's part of it too. Is I wouldn't espouse developing AI solutions for our users if we weren't doing it for ourselves.
Agreed. Yeah, now we can be champions helping others adopt AI in a way that makes their lives better. A new mission, a new old mission for UX researchers everywhere. One question in the chat that's sort of tactical here is any best practices around using AI to democratize research? So we've talked a little bit about access to things, files and information that lies in a repository. Any other ways you're enabling stakeholders or other groups to empower them to do their own research?
So we there's two models you can use. You can kind of create a AI tool that enables a researcher to do the analysis well, or you create AI tools that enable anyone to do analysis well of user feedback. And in my view, the latter scales way better than the former approach. And I think that most product teams are going to be asking for that very, very soon. So I'd rather get ahead of it and offer it to them. But to do it, you just got to plug in all of the, it's amazing how much user feedback there actually is out there when you start mapping it. One of our chiefs of staff did a process of looking at where is all the user feedback in the organization that isn't getting to our product teams. And it was mind-boggling when you actually saw it all mapped out. So in my mind, a lot of it is just let's get available data, put it into an AI system, make it available to our product teams. And as I mentioned, it doesn't stop user research from doing great user research. It just focuses us on the most important and impactful areas, and it enables us to measure the impact we're having. So it doesn't replace our discipline. There's always more research than can physically be done by researchers.
I'm seeing nods from Christen and Manuela. Anything to add on that front?
I think it also a little bit like we have done with a couple of our agents. I think it also you can put these best practices. So AI is good at, okay, you have that knowledge, you have these criteria, these good practices, and you can put it and they can help you to guide that. So now if you have more people that are not researchers but can help doing the research, you don't have to have a researcher behind making sure that, you know, they are like keeping these best practices and all these tools and processes that researchers are experts. You can put that in an agent, and an agent can be there in the back helping them. So that could it could enable people that are not researchers to use this with the guidance of AI. That you can, yeah, again, your team, researcher team, can be controlling and creating and passing that knowledge in a way that can be consumed by no researchers.
And that sort of touches on your point earlier about just the ways we can, as the subject matter expert, craft the right experience for our stakeholders to be engaging with these tools. So yeah, I really like that whole sentiment. It tracks very nicely with, I think, what will be our maybe final question. Maybe we have time for one more, but a compelling question from Janet in the chat is, do you think good researchers will be a different skill set in the future, you know, today, from what a good researcher was yesterday in the past? How do you think our most desirable skills are changing? If you can speculate or speak to that at all. And Manuela, it actually makes me think about when you were talking about prompting and things like that, how important the prompt is. So are these skills that folks need to have? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to the most important is going to be the human creativity, ingenuity, and try and finding what is the where to go. I think which is already part of our research, but that is going to be the big potential. We are not going to be, I don't think we are going to be needed to do interviews. Well, maybe that part with the human interaction is not, but you know, all that analysis, all that being behind the scenes, like doing, I don't think it's going to be needed. It's going to be needed all that human part, creativity, curiosity, and good judge, at least for some time.
Absolutely. Christen, I saw you nod a few times. Anything to add there?
I don't think I have anything to add. I was just agreeing with Manuela. Yes.
Great. And Mark, like from your perspective as a leader, anything you're looking out for these days?
So I think user research used to be a discipline of more tactical kind of user, like summative usability testing of interfaces. Then it became more of a strategic function that does early stage discovery. We're finding that AI can be good at synthesizing a lot of that stuff and freeing up time for different types of research. I'm excited with the middle bit between formative and summative, and getting my researchers to be agents of innovation and concepting and prototyping and action in product teams. Like the more time they're driving ideation and activation and concepting, the more impact they're going to be having. And if I can see more effort done there at the expense of less time doing, you know, manual analysis, I'll take it, because I want our team to be impactful. I want them to drive results and to be agents of innovation and creativity. And I think the future is really, really bright for user research within that context.
Hear, hear. I think that's a great call to action for us all. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing all of this like rich information about the details, the implementation, your thoughts on the future. This has been really fantastic. I want to let our audience know that we do have a little feedback evaluation form, right? We're researchers, so here we are. If you'd like to give us a little bit of feedback today, it's a very short survey you can take. The link is in the chat there. And for our giveaway today, I'd love to highlight Alok. Your questions and comments were very engaging. So I'd love to send you a copy of Life After Tech by Debbie Levitt. So thank you for all of your engagement, and thanks for everyone who participated in the chat today. Stay tuned for more on AI at our next event in June, and keep an eye out for our AI club coming up as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. We are going to transition to some networking breakouts for anyone who wants to stick around and chat a little bit more. So if you don't have a hard stop, stay with us for 15 minutes, have a chat with some other researchers, but we'll let everyone go who needs to go. Thank you. Raymond, is there anything you would add here?
No, it's awesome. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, panelists. What a great session.
Yes.
I was thrilled to see so many people interested and so much participation in the chat.